Hi everyone. Have you ever noticed how more and more parts of everyday life seem to have a medical explanation? Like feeling sad, there might be a diagnosis for that. Having trouble focusing, there might be a medication. Aging, pregnancy, childbirth, even baldness. All things that used to be considered normal parts of life are now often treated as medical conditions. And this process is called medicalization. And today I'm going to explain what it is, how it developed, and who studied it, why sociologists think it's important, and what current research says about it. By the end of this videocast, I hope you'll start noticing examples of medicalization everywhere around you. To start off, what is medicalization? I'm going to start with the definition. Basically, medicalization is the process of defining or treating human experiences and behaviors as medical problems that require diagnosis or treatment. Basically, something that wasn't originally considered an illness gradually becomes viewed as one. Medicalization doesn't always mean someone is sick. Instead, it means medicine becomes the main way society understands and deals with a problem. And some really common examples of this in modern time is ADHD, depression, anxiety, obesity, menopause, infertility, childbirth, addiction, erectile dysfunction, and hair loss are the ones I have heard the most about. I'm sure there's a lot more. A lot of it hits on eating disorders as well. But many of these conditions involve real medical issues, but sociology kind of asks a different question. Instead of asking, like, can doctors treat this? It's more so, why did society decide this should be treated medically in the first place? That is what makes medicalization a sociological topic rather than just a medical one. And this one means a lot to me as I'm going into this field and I am surrounded by medicine daily, working as a CNA. I'm surrounded by the nurses, the doctors, the physicians, all of it. And I'm just seeing so many things being like overdiagnosed, overprescribed. And I don't think this many people should be on this many medications. But I'm just going to talk about medicalization. For a bit of a history background, medicalization wasn't always common. Hundreds of years ago, many illnesses were explained through religion or superstition. People believed disease came from evil spirits, curses, or punishment from God. As science began to improve during the 1800s and the 1900s, the doctors became more successful at treating diseases. Vaccines, the antibiotics, and surgery dramatically improved life expectancy. And because this medicine was becoming so effective, society began trusting doctors to explain more and more aspects of life. And then eventually medicine expanded beyond infectious diseases into areas like behavior, emotions, mental health, learning disabilities, aging, and even everyday experiences. And so basically, today, healthcare affects almost every stage of life, from birth to death, in all aspects of life. Many sociologists argue that medicine has become one of the most powerful institutions in society, and I fully agree with that. Some of the important sociologists I did some research on, and I think were briefly mentioned in the book at one point. I ended up doing separate research for this because this topic was a little bit ago. Irving Zola was one that frequently popped up. He was one of the first major scholars on this topic. And in the 1970s, he argued that medicine was becoming one of society's main way of controlling behavior. And he believed more and more social problems were being redefined as medical problems. And so, like, instead of punishment or moral judgment, society increasingly looked to doctors for all the answers. Another one that I found was Peter Conrad. He's probably the scholar I found that was most associated with medicalization today. He argues that medicalization isn't always bad. Instead, he says it has both benefits and drawbacks. For example, medicalization can reduce stigma. Instead of blaming someone for depression, we recognize it as a legitimate health condition. However, he also warns that medicalization can label ordinary human differences as disorders, and he encourages everyone to kind of ask whether every new diagnosis is actually necessary. Another influential sociologist I did some research on was Michael Foucault. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. Although he wasn't studying medicalization specifically, his ideas about power greatly influenced sociology as a whole. Like, Foucault believed that medicine doesn't just heal people, it also shapes how society defines what is normal and abnormal. According to Foucault, like, medical knowledge gives professionals authority over people's bodies and behaviors. So those were the three main ones that I kind of found on this topic. And I also did some digging into like how the major perspectives, the main sociological paradigms view medicalization, because for sure sociologists don't all agree about medicalization. So the few different viewpoints was the functionalist perspective, which they generally believe that medicine helps society function. Doctors treat illnesses so people can return to work, school, and family responsibilities. Medicalization can improve health and quality of life. For example, recognizing postpartum depression has helped many mothers receive treatment that they may not have received decades ago, like the month-long leave or however long you get. Some countries, it's like 2 years that you get for postpartum leave. It's not that long in the United States, but it varies, and that was kind of because of this. The conflict perspective views this in a view of power and inequality. They kind of ask, like, who benefits more when these conditions become medical? Sometimes these pharmaceutical companies profit from expanding diagnostics, and they benefit from all this overdiagnosing medications. Also, the insurance companies, the healthcare systems, and the medical industries also benefit financially, like diagnosing all of these people and getting them all these medications. Like, that's a lot of money that goes into that. And so these theorists can argue that money and power sometimes influence what becomes considered a medical condition, which I can definitely see. The last of the main three was the symbolic interactionism, which focuses on the everyday interactions like always. They study how receiving a diagnosis changes someone's identity. Like, for example, like when you're diagnosed with ADHD or anxiety, this can change how teachers, employers, family members, or even the individual see themselves. It changes a lot of things, and a lot of people can make it their whole personality. These labels can shape behavior and expectations. So some examples of medicalization that I listed were one that happens all around us. The main example is childbirth. Years ago, childbirth usually happened at home with family or midwives, and today most births occur in hospitals with medical professionals, monitoring equipment, and medical interventions. While this has definitely improved safety in many situations, these sociologists also note how childbirth has increasingly become viewed as a medical event rather than simply a natural life process, which I think is kind of mind-boggling to think about, how much that has changed since the past. And another really big example in today's society is ADHD. Many children genuinely benefit from diagnosis and treatment, but a lot of sociologists debate where the line exists between normal childhood behavior and a medical disorder. Another one that's kind of a vain one is the aging. The wrinkles is the biggest example of it being like vain. But the memory changes and hormone changes are normal parts of growing older. It is. But all the people trying to like treat their wrinkles, I'm like, that's normal. You don't need to get rid of your wrinkles. So all of these products and treatments that present aging as something that must be fixed is just really sad to me. Like, it's like no one wants to show signs that they've lived a life, kind of. Mental health is another really big example. The conditions like depression and anxiety were once heavily stigmatized, and medicalization has helped millions of people receive treatment. But at the same time, some critics wonder, like, whether ordinary stress or sadness is sometimes mistaken for a medical disorder. Like, being nervous to order does not necessarily mean you have social anxiety. But I did find a peer-reviewed research study to kind of go over. It was one of the ones by Peter Conrad. I really liked looking at his work, even though he wasn't specifically always talking about it. He did have a really well-known review that examined the decades of research on medicalization. His work found that medicine has increasingly expanded into many areas of everyday life. He concluded that medicalization is no longer driven only by doctors, because today the pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies, the biotechnology, advocacy groups, and even consumers themselves all contribute to the expanding medical diagnostics, whatever you want to say. For example, like the direct-to-consumer advertising encourages people to recognize symptoms and seek treatment. All the advertisements that I'm getting that is like, have you been experienced this? Take this. And then it's like a million lists of all the negative side effects. Like, I'm like, that just can't be what everyone needs. Like, all of the ads I see nowadays are like trying to treat something. Like, since I've been working CNA, I keep getting ads about compression socks trying to treat these veins that I could get. And I'm like, I just never know where the line should be drawn, and I think a lot of people feel that way as well. And this study also found that medicalization has both positive and negative consequences for sure. On the positive side, it reduces the stigma and increases access to healthcare. But on the negative side, it can lead to this unnecessary testing, medication, increased healthcare costs, and treating normal human experiences as diseases. So just overall, Conrad argued that medicalization is neither entirely good nor entirely bad, which I can for sure agree with. I just wish we could draw this boundary a little more clearly. So every situation should be evaluated individually and taken very seriously. And then why medicalization matters today is with how much it affects everyday society. Like, it influences all of your healthcare costs. It influences insurance coverage. It influences the pharmaceutical advertising, education, mental health, parenting, aging, disability, sports, social media, all of the above. It influences every single aspect of life. You can't escape medicalization. As medicine continues advancing, the sociologists believe medicalization will likely continue expanding into new areas of life, and understanding this concept helps us truly think critically about when medical treatment improves lives and when society may be over-medicalizing ordinary human experiences. To kind of wrap this up, medicalization is the process of turning human experiences into medical issues that require diagnoses or treatment. And today, I just kind of discussed its history, important sociologists like Irving Zola, Peter Conrad, and Michel Foucault. I think he's, yeah. Different sociological perspectives, several everyday examples and research showing both the benefits and drawbacks of medicalization. Medicalization has definitely improved the lives of millions by reducing the stigma and increasing access to treatment. But at the same time, I think it's really important to ask the question, are we solving medical problems, or are we sometimes creating them? Thank you for watching. And that concludes my videocast.